What is going on, everybody? Happy Thursday. Welcome back to NFL Turf Talk. Week 6 is in the rearview mirror, Scotty. We're heading into Week 7 with some action between Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler on an exciting primetime game to kick off Week 7. We're going to be giving you guys all of the Week 6 storylines, our takeaways, the whole recap, as well as some trades that took place all across the AFC, specifically the AFC East. Some difference makers moving teams over there. We're going to discuss that. We're going to get into some best bets tonight, our updated top 10 power rankings heading into Week 7. Man, this year is flying by as always, but we still got a lot of football left to play in the regular season. Guys, as always, do yourself a favor, do us a favor. Make sure to follow us on all social media platforms. And if you want to be interactive throughout tonight's show or any of our live streams, make sure to check out the YouTube link. It's in our bio on Twitter. It will take you directly to any of our YouTube channels, specifically right now, the DSM Turf Talk channel. It is the best and only spot to be active with us. Get your comments and questions pulled up on the screen here like so. I'm one half of your host, Dylan Davis. To my right, my co-host, Scotty. My man, happy Thursday. What's going on?
Happy Thursday, brother. Just getting this show shared out to everyone around. But I'm feeling good, man. Obviously, you mentioned it. We're going into Week 7, which is just crazy to think about. The season is just flying by, obviously, here. And we have a ton of action to get into. I mean, there were some decent games this past weekend, but you mentioned the trades that happened around the league. That's going to change some perspectives on some of those teams now. I do believe that. But yeah, man, I'm ready to get into it with you. I'm interested to see where the power rankings went because mine didn't change much this week, and it's the first week it's been that way. So I don't know if that's a good sign.
I'm coming off of a short hiatus from Turf Talk, so I haven't updated my power rankings since
you're in that Philly slump.
Yeah, since going into well, I guess it was going into Week 6 for that one. So I'll have to see how much mine have changed. It'll be interesting to go back and forth with that. D-Rab, what's going on, man? But let's take a look at this Week 6 slate. We can bounce all over from last week's Thursday night football matchup in the NFC West with the Seahawks and the 49ers. Both teams now 3-3 on the season. You can go Monday Night Football in the AFC East with the Bills and the Jets. Josh Allen and company getting a humongous win on Monday Night Football, both making trades following that one. But let's start here close to home within our own division. And I think maybe a team that's been the strong suit, the class of the NFC so far this year, that would be the Detroit Lions for me, man. They go out, they make a statement in Jerry Well. More stories throughout the week. Jerry Jones goes on a local radio show and threatens to have one of the hosts fired for asking questions about what's wrong with his franchise and this team right now. 47-9, man, on the road. Obviously, they lose Aiden Hutchinson. That is a monstrous blow for them.
Yeah.
So obviously, we'll have to see how they try to patch that up on the defensive side. But 4-1 on the year, undefeated on the road. 47-9. It was never a ball game, Scotty. And as an Eagles fan who just got done watching his team, as ugly as it was, win a game, getting to sit back and watch that was a thing of beauty.
It was beautiful.
But Jared Goff, the combination of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, all the weapons that just come together. I was texting you. Sam Laporta hadn't scored before that game. Put him in for a touchdown. He scores a 50-some yarder on like a double reverse flea flicker. Amon-Ra St. Brown doesn't even have to do too much most weeks. Jameson Williams, so on and so forth. To me, man, the Lions are the team I am bought in on the most in the NFC right now. Especially you look at the state of the Eagles. You look at the injuries to San Francisco. You look at uncertainty all across the board. The Detroit Lions, even with that Aiden Hutchinson injury, is, to me, the class of the NFC.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that as well. And you'll see that based on my power rankings as well here. And going into this game, you mentioned it, man, just to watch that happen. It was a delightful evening last Sunday. And I was on here last Sunday morning, and I was all over that game myself. I mean, just all over the spread, all over the, David Montgomery touchdown. Yeah. I mean,
I think everything over and Laporta touchdown.
Everything was pointing to a Lions blowout in this game, in my opinion. Even in Dallas, because you look at Dallas and what their struggles have been this season, stopping the run. They can't do it. They're a bottom 10 rush defense in the NFL. You look at the Lions, you already know what they're working with on the offensive end. They're probably a top 5 unit now. They were top 6 going into last week. So with the great numbers, I'm sure they may have moved up a bit. We'll see going into this week against Minnesota, which big matchup there, obviously, in the NFC. We won't get into that tonight, but that's going to be a hell of a showdown between Detroit and Minnesota, two, obviously interdivision rivals. But to see them go out and lay the wood on the Cowboys, I was not too surprised. It was just a good matchup for Detroit, very bad matchup for Dallas.
Yeah.
Their defense is just horrible, and I thought that was supposed to be the calling card.
And I know they're injured, but they were bad before all those injuries even occurred.
It's not like Micah helps the rush defense, right? He's not a prolific run stopper. He's a pass rusher. That's what he does. That's what he's good at. Same thing with DeMarcus Lawrence. He's not this, prolific run stopper. So, the injuries are what they are. I know they got some injuries in the secondary, but it's the same way we operate with the Eagles. There's no excuses at the end of the day. If you're going to contend in this league, you're going to have to work without some key pieces sometimes. And, we'll see how Detroit moves going forward. Like you said, lose Aiden Hutchinson, that's a huge loss. Yeah. It changes the landscape of your entire defense.
Disgusting fashion, man.
Yeah. It's a gross one to even look at. It makes you, you question even playing the rest of the game, like where the score was at, everything that was going on in it. I've seen rumors of them, like, people are like, go after Max Crosby. I guess I don't understand financially how that's possible for them. If it's not possible, for example, for the Eagles, you know what I mean? You have Aiden Hutchinson. You are going to have to pay him TJ Watt levels of money, right? Like
it's probably less of a realistic target and more of a,
want
who could fill in and replicate Aiden Hutchinson and keep this team on Super Bowl pace.
Yeah, that sounds great. Go out and get Myles Garrett too. You know what I mean? It sounds awesome.
I don't know if you had mentioned this in the previous show, and that's where he's thinking of it. But Hassan Reddick, man, obviously dropped from his agency, now picked up Drew Rosenhaus and company, and now they're actually getting, making some headway with the Jets on a possible trade upcoming. So maybe he can stop getting fined and figure out where he's going to go. But to your point, look, Hassan Reddick seems great in theory. Well, why isn't Hassan Reddick playing football for the New York Jets?
Are they going to pay him?
He wants to get paid. So whoever trades for him is going to have to pay him immediately. And to Scotty's point, does that make sense for you moving forward if you're Detroit? Like Hassan Reddick's not going to come here and be a 6-month placeholder for the Detroit Lions. Like wherever he ends up, he wants the big money. He wants the years. That's why he's not in Philly. That's why he's not, once out of New York. So again, in theory, I saw the comment. I'm like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. More so than a Max Crosby, or I know people were talking about Myles Garrett with Cleveland.
A lot of guys
they're selling. But it's not going to work out financially. I mean, I don't think so. I don't know much about the Lions situation, and maybe it could work out. Like right now, they can afford it today. But to your point, talking long term, it might not line up with their plans. But
I'm just thinking of like 4 young guys that they have off the top of my head: Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, Brian Branch, Aiden Hutchinson. Those 4 guys are going to need money over the next year or two, right? And that's where the idea of, like, I'm just operating from like an Eagles standpoint. Like, why can't the Eagles go out and get the edge rusher that they dreamed of, right? They can't go out and get Myles Garrett or a Max Crosby because they're just simply not going to be able to afford it over time. But once again, maybe you go in a different direction. I mentioned Trey Hendrickson the other day from the Bengals. They have a few pass rushers on that line that maybe they could move on from. There's some other teams, middling out there that you can hit up. The Jaguars, what do they got going on their defensive line?
Are you in agree? Like, do you agree though that that you view them as the class of the NFC? Like, even
Detroit,
like put it this way: even if CMC is able to go at any point this year, when he comes back, he's not going to be able to full go. Like Christian McCaffrey's not getting the ball 30 plus times a game, 20 plus times a game.
Right.
They are getting healthier. Like Debo's back, Kittle's back, like everything. Detroit's just been the best team collectively. Like, and you have your Tampa Bays, you have your Atlantas. I don't think they're on that level with Detroit. But I think, man, on the other side of the conversation here, you look at Dallas, and I just want to know. You mentioned their problems. Yeah, they can't run the ball. They can't stop the run. Something you and I talked about all offseason long, how Jerry Jones sat on his hands and did nothing, acted like he did a lot, acted like his team was all in, but essentially acquired nothing. I mean, Eric Kendricks and bringing back Ezekiel Elliott were the two biggest things he did all offseason. He fixed nothing in what was a crowded NFC conference. So we know what some of their issues are. I want to know what's happening to the two dudes that they just paid. The two dudes that have been together for 5 years now. Because all you're here, they get paid right at the end of the summer, both of them. It's the two big names, CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. And all you hear throughout commentary in every game you watch of the Dallas Cowboys is they got to get on the same page. They're not on the same page. How are those two not on the same page?
Yeah.
CeeDee Lamb has almost 700 career targets thrown mostly by that man. You both got your money. CeeDee was going to hold out for his money. Dak's been franchise tagged and gone through gruesome injuries and is still here. And now all of a sudden, with all the change and losing pieces, the two dudes that were supposed to be staples for you, that you could count on every Sunday to make explosive plays and to put up points and help out your defense, they're not on the same page. Every week, there's a clip of CeeDee Lamb. We need the lip readers out because he's saying something to Dak Prescott on the sideline after a bad throw, after an interception. How are those two not on the same page together?
Yeah, I don't, I think that's just like it's like a narrative we can throw over their situation that they got going on in that offense. But the simple truth is they just don't have any talent outside of CeeDee Lamb. Like that is the cold, honest truth about this offense, is that he is the only person on that offense that truly scares you. I know, is it Devontae Turpin has kind of turned up a little bit lately, had some big plays, but that's just what he is. He's just a big play guy. Brandon Cooks has been out a couple weeks. He's probably the second deadliest, if you want to call him deadly weapon, on their offense. They have no rushing attack. Dak obviously is not like the mobile threat. He's not going to move around in the pocket that you would see from some other types of quarterbacks. So they're just in a rock and a hard place. I mean, Dak was like, no pun intended, no funny business. Dak was on his back a lot of that game against Detroit, man. I agree. He was under pressure the entire game.
Look, I hear about the fact that CeeDee Lamb is really their only option.
Yeah.
But it's not even so much from a target standpoint and not getting him the ball. It's a timing thing with the two
turnovers. Yeah.
Like that's what's not adding up. How are those two not on the same page? But what was supposed to be a big NFC showdown. When you looked at that schedule and you saw week 6, that was supposed to be a premier game that you can look back on this season. It was very one-sided. And Detroit doesn't leave unscathed in that game either. Like we talked about,
that was
so a lot to keep an eye on.
The one thing the Cowboys in recent years, I feel, have had over the Eagles to an extent, right, was their defense and the physicality that their defense played with. They have guys out there in their secondary, right? Is it Donovan? What's the safety's name? Why is it slipping my mind right now? Donovan Wilson?
I think, yes.
Donovan Wilson. I know he's a hard hitter out there. Nonetheless, what I'm trying to say, they do not have that anymore. They let Tony Pollard go this offseason. He was their best running back, right? You bring back Ezekiel Elliott. He's completely washed. They don't have any young running backs that look to be any good. You can't really tell because their offensive line is garbage as well. But then on the defensive end, they're getting the ball ran down their throats. They're not even a physical unit.
Because he did nothing to fix it, man. I mean, you lost Tony Pollard and you lost 3 starting offensive linemen, and you did almost nothing to fix it, which is why I want to wrap up this little conversation with Jerry Jones. Go fuck yourself, dude.
Yeah, man.
Because honestly, bro, you and we do this podcast. We're trying to grow it. I could not imagine having my dream job, covering one of the teams I love in my city, working, on live radio, getting to interview one of the owners of my favorite team, and him threatening my job publicly live on air.
I'm
As the
telling you, brother.
billionaire he is, go fuck yourself, dude.
I'm telling you,
Why?
brother.
Because someone tried to ask you a hard-hitting question. Hey, Jerry, what were you doing all offseason? Why do we keep having these issues? Why is the team like 0-5 going back to the end of last year in Jerry's world?
I know several Dallas Cowboys fans, and I can say this as a factual statement. I'm not going to say any names. I know several Dallas Cowboys fans that have left their fandom for the Cowboys or are talking about leaving their fandom for the Cowboys. If you're watching
knew
out
a few
there,
growing
you
up,
know who
dude.
you are.
Just
It is what it is. I don't even blame you. I don't. I don't blame you for getting out from underneath of that train. That train of sadness. It reminds me of like Clippers fans right now. Like that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
I'm not getting into NBA on here, but Cowboys fans, that just must be rough. I know we sit here in our disappointment as Eagles fans, but it could be worse, is what I'm trying to say. It could be fucking worse.
Yep.
Yeah, no name dropping, Martian. No name dropping
None
on
of
the
that.
show.
None of that.
I don't blame you guys out there. If you're a Cowboys fan, you're thinking about jumping off that cliff. Hey, jump. Take the first step. That's all it takes, man.
Take a leap of faith. Another marquee matchup from week 6,
Yes,
Monday
sir.
Night Football, Jets, Bills. And in that, we can add in these trades from this past week. But the Bills go into the Meadowlands and get a 23-20 win. A pretty high scoring first half. I think it was 20-17 at halftime. So each team just kicked a field goal in the second half. There were multiple missed field goals in this game.
I had Jets money line, by the way. Just blew the fuck out of me, by the way.
My apologies, man. My condolences, I meant to say. The Jets blew their shot here, man.
Yeah.
They blew their shot.
Multiple
That's what it
times.
showed me. And not only that, Scotty, it's like, so you fired Robert Saleh, which, whatever, Robert Saleh, since becoming the head coach of the New York Jets, the numbers weren't really backing him up, but you can look up at management, you can look at ownership, you can look at, past quarterbacks and draft classes, and obviously the injury to Aaron last year. You can look at all of it and go, well, how the fuck is this on our defensive minded head coach? But whatever, the win, he did not have a good winning percentage since becoming the head coach of the Jets. So whatever, you want some change, you want to light a spark early in the year, we'll do that. And now they trade for Davante Adams the day after losing and falling to 2-4 on the year. And it just, man, it does almost nothing for me. I'm not saying it doesn't move me a little bit, because the idea of Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall all on the field surrounding Aaron Rodgers, there's a lot of football left to be played, and they don't need to win their division to make the playoffs. There is an extra wild card spot thanks to a couple years ago. So they still have some runway to work with. I just can't pinpoint what it is with this team, man. They are inconsistent. There are moments that Aaron Rodgers and this offense look phenomenal. Like, they move the ball down on you back-to-back possessions. The opening drive of this past game went right down the field. Second drive went right down the field, scored a touchdown, 10 points in the first quarter. And it's like, okay, they're starting to figure things out as a unit. And then they go ice cold. And then Aaron's turning the ball over. Not to mention, dude, I'm not saying he's wrong, but as a future Hall of Fame, how do you throw Mike Williams under the bus like that after that game? Regardless if you are correct as the quarterback, regardless if Mike Williams was supposed to run towards, he ran the wrong route, then he slips, you were expecting him to come back, whatever. How do you, as Aaron Rodgers, throw that younger wide receiver under the bus like that? That's crazy to me. You cannot tell me he had nothing to do with the Robert Saleh firing.
Oh, yeah.
You cannot tell me he has everything to do with Davante Adams coming here. Yeah. And they're doing nothing to move the needle each and every week. You had a chance in London against the Vikings. You turned the ball over how many times, Aaron? Yeah. You couldn't get the job done. You have a chance at home to even things up with the division leader and Josh Allen. Yeah. You can't get the job done. So now, is Davante Adams supposed to just solve everything? It's going to help.
It's going to help.
But I don't know that it's going to put the Jets in AFC contention. Whereas the Bills win this game on the road, injured, no James Cook. less talent on the offensive side of the ball, less talent on the defensive side of the ball. Josh Allen wasn't incredible throughout this one, right? He had a couple flashes, used his legs a little bit. They go out. They don't get the better receiver, but that receiver will have a bigger impact on the Buffalo Bills than Davante Adams will the New York Jets. That's what I took away from that game and the following hours shortly after that. The Bills win that trade, and Amari Cooper has a new best friend with Josh Allen.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're the Jets, was wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 1? Was that a problem? I mean, Garrett Wilson has been going off the last 2 games. Allen Lazard has gone off throughout this season at times, right? He's been one of his favorite targets. I get adding one more, but it begs the question, like you said, what is really wrong here? Was it the offense? Like it kind of is the offense. It's the red zone offense. Maybe you think Davante Adams can help you there in a sense, but you're already not getting Breece Hall the ball enough, in my opinion. You're getting Braylon Allen, and Braylon Allen looks like
coming from a fantasy owner of Breece Hall. Yeah, Breece Hall gets taken off the field way too much.
Gets taken off the field in the red zone specifically as well, right? Like I had laid him for a touchdown as well, by the way. Didn't get that
Braylon
either.
Allen's getting goal line touches.
Took it all the way down the field, and then Braylon Allen, he actually did get in the end zone, got called back. Yeah. So they're having these these preparation mistakes is what I like to call them. And it's very similar to the Eagles in a sense, and it does stem from bad coaching, bad leadership. A lot of holding calls that would take them out of position. I think it was a holding call that cost them that touchdown.
False starts, illegal.
Yeah, the interceptions that are mixed in there, right? The mental mistakes. Even on that last play that Aaron Rodgers threw the interception, and I'm not a guy that likes to go back and say, "Oh, this guy should have done that." We could do that with a bunch of players across the league week to week, but Breece Hall,
I saw that
wide open.
I saw that, man,
for a first down, and maybe he takes it to the house. Who knows?
And plenty of more room following the.
But like I said, I'm not going to sit here and play retroactive football and try to tell Aaron Rodgers what he should be doing in the moment. I get what he was going for, but the point is, there's mistakes being made by the players mixed in here as well. The offensive line is not good. They're not balanced.
A lot here in Philly. They don't complement each other.
Exactly.
Because when the offense is actually moving the ball and scoring points like they were in the first quarter and the first half, the defense is getting gashed by Ray fucking Davis. They can't tackle. They can't wrap up. They're giving up like 8 yards a pop. They give up 20 points in the first half. But then the defense figures it out, only allows a field goal in the second half entirety.
The offense shits the bed.
But the offense shits the bed. Special teams is missing field goals. There's multiple mental mistakes. There's turnovers. It's like I don't know. You're past the point of convincing me that the Jets, who I was extremely high on before the year started, getting Aaron Rodgers back, he's part of the problem. I don't think he's the biggest problem. I mean, he was 23 of 35, 294 passing and 2 touchdowns. So it's not like he had a bad game.
Their offensive line.
But,
that's the biggest problem for them. They need to be able to run the football with the running backs that they have, and they can't. That's a problem. But
that's true, man.
I do agree with you. The Bills. You go into the Meadowlands and you win this game as well, man. That's why it's such you don't make declarations this early, of course, but it's something that could decide this division, right? Like it's such one of those games we can look back on and be like, man, if only the Jets took care of home field advantage against the Bills, right? But it is interesting how it's playing out, man. Because Josh Allen has even. He's had to kind of restrict himself and bring himself back a little bit.
Yeah, Josh Allen was the runaway MVP for me the first 4 weeks. And the last 2, obviously, they had the blowout loss against the Ravens. And then he has not, looked like that superhero that he was playing. But he was being a superhero without trying to do superhero-like things. There was a throw here and there he makes that are, wow, how'd he do that? But a lot of it was the simple stuff. And the numbers were coming with it and the points were following. Obviously didn't really do that against the Ravens at all, and then didn't do that against the Jets, but they got the win, man. And that's what was big for me with this Amari Cooper trade. And I know, to Martian's point, Amari Cooper, we talked about it, last week when the Eagles were getting ready to prep for the Browns. The whole Browns team as a whole and Amari Cooper have a drops problem.
Yeah,
I'll bet you Not saying insinuating anything was done on purpose. It wasn't on purpose. But when you're in that environment, when you're playing for a lifeless team with a bad culture, I promise you Amari Cooper doesn't really drop the ball too much now in Buffalo. I promise he looks like a different guy back up there in Buffalo. And that's what Buffalo needed because they're 4-2. Josh has played great ball. Their defense has stepped up. James Cook's a monster. Keon Coleman has flashed a little bit. Dalton Kincaid, etc. But I go back and I go, all right, man, they look good. But when push comes to shove, do they have enough? Like, even though the Chiefs don't look good right now, the Chiefs are going to take it to another level in January.
Yeah.
Do the Bills have enough juice? Do they have enough for Josh to rely on? Now Amari Cooper brings more of that to them. And that's what I was kind of looking for.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. We'll see if Amari Cooper, can still reach that like true elite wide receiver 1-esque type performances, but he's definitely going to bring more experience and something better than what they've had, something different. Khalil Shakir, you mentioned it, Keon Coleman. They have some talented guys. They're younger, but you needed kind of that veteran Stephon Diggs. But you get kind of the Stephon Diggs without the personality, right?
Like, exactly. I'm sure there's some smart asses out there that are going to say, "Whoa, you replaced Stephon Diggs with Amari Cooper." A change of scenery is obviously needed across all sports, across all work. Like, things just happen, man. Things run its course. So, would you say Amari Cooper is better than Stephon Diggs even still? No, I wouldn't. No, but doesn't mean Amari Cooper can't step in and immediately be a true wide receiver one with great production alongside.
Might be a better fit with Josh Allen personality-wise too, right? Correct. Like we'll see. But I do agree with you. I think I do like the Amari Cooper trade just because the Bills were already in a better place anyways. This is a 4-2 team trading for a wide receiver 1 versus a 2-4 team trading for a wide receiver 1, regardless of their rankings against each other, right? The caliber of player. I do agree. It's a nice weapon to add for Josh Allen there, my man.
One more big game, man, that I wanted to hit on from this week 6 slate. Two dynamic quarterbacks that absolutely balled out in a 7-point game. Ravens, Commanders. And I think there's multiple ways to go at this game. As an Eagles fan, Commanders get the loss, which is something we were looking for. Good. We're 3-2 there, 4-2, good. However, still look pretty good in a loss. I know they gave up 30 points. Maybe the defense didn't play all that well, but that rising star they have there under center, 24 of 35, 269 passing, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers, played a clean game. And kept his team in it till the very end on the road against a very, very good Baltimore Ravens team
that played at their ceiling. You kind of feel like, I don't want to throw that just label on the Baltimore Ravens ceiling, but like Lamar went off, Zay Flowers went off, Derrick Henry went off, and you still win by 7 at home against the Commanders. It's interesting. It's more positive for the Commanders than negative about the Ravens. So I will say that.
Absolutely. I don't think anything was negative about the Ravens. I think the Ravens, ever since starting 0-2, have just turned it to another notch, man. And something you and I talked about multiple weeks ago, that first big game, who were they playing? Maybe it was the Bills, maybe it was a different game when they got things going, but the Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson duo is maybe the scariest thing going in the league right now. 24 for a $132 and 2 touchdowns for Derrick Henry. You add in Lamar for 40 rushing yards. On top of it, Lamar throws 20 of 26 for over 320 passing, and it's Huddy.
Brother, I'm telling you, Lamar and Henry duo is like reaching like levels of Patrick Mahomes, like type
and
of, I don't want to use the term.
I don't want to wind back the clock and say what if. But when they lost that game in Arrowhead to start the year by a toenail, this duo wasn't this. They had not figured out. Derrick Henry was not acclimated. They were not operating at
Zay Flowers wasn't operating at the level he's operating at either,
9
man.
for a $132. Jesus Christ.
They got three tight ends that they can use as well.
Andrews Mark Andrews wasn't doing a goddamn thing. 66
and is the other guy? Is it Kolar or something?
I don't know. I don't see him. Andrews, Isaiah Likely, I know of. Jack Kolar, I don't know.
I think he had a big game again. Yeah, Charlie Kolar. He had 3 receptions, 64 yards, and a touchdown against the
Charlie
Bengals
Jack,
the week
generic
before.
white man.
Yeah, literally. But yeah, man, no, you're to your point. I do agree. They're looking deadly, and I obviously look at from an Eagles fan perspective. I look at the rest of the Eagles schedule, and I'm like, I don't know about beating that team. Like, quite honestly, like matchup wise, right? Like the matchups go into it as well, but. What defense?
Hey, it'll be a fun task. It'll be a fun day for us with the hope, with the matchup that we have. But we'll see. I did just want to give that shout out to the Commanders, 4-2, leading our division still. And even though it was a loss, Jaden balled out on the road against a very, very tough team. You could argue that the Baltimore Ravens are the best team in football right now. So obviously, a storyline we weren't expecting, that being the Washington Commanders even being a positive this year.
I knew that he could be dangerous. Like, obviously, his skill set coming out of college, like, especially in your first year, man, where teams just don't have any footage of you in the NFL. Like, they don't know how you're going to respond to certain defensive approaches. I knew that he could be dangerous. I knew that they could be annoying. But could they be the best in the NFC East? I didn't think that far ahead regarding them, but they look the part right now. They really do. They got the run game going with Brian Robinson in the backfield. Obviously,
before this week, they did not run the ball well this week. He did. I don't think he played this past week, but
Terry McLaurin's playing really well.
But they're a team I'm keeping an eye on too, man, to see that wide receiver trade deadline market. A lot of people are looking at. I would be shocked if Washington doesn't try to explore that and get another weapon in there across from Terry McLaurin for Jaden Daniels to have this year.
You know what's crazy, and it just came into my head, but Hunter Renfrow, still a free agent, man.
I was gonna say, where is I haven't
He's
seen
a free agent. Like he just didn't get a contract, and like I'm not saying like go out and get your Hunter Renfrow deal signed, but like he was a quality wide receiver. He was a very niche quality slot wide receiver in the NFL. But I agree with you. I think Commanders will be on that short list of teams looking for a wide receiver upgrade because why not? You have a quarterback that can get them the ball.
I agree, man. I was going to save this for Sunday show when we break down the games, but I want to get to it now because it is midweek conversation. The Pittsburgh Steelers get a 32-13 victory. They're 4-2. They are tied for the division lead in the AFC North. And they're having a quarterback change, Scotty.
Yeah.
What are they doing? Look, my thoughts on Justin Fields. This goes back a couple years now. Justin Fields is being apparently over-criticized way more than I would ever take it to that. Like, he has done nothing to play him out of this position. And you can look at the passing numbers. 14 of 24, 145 yards, no touchdowns. All right. Well, he's protecting the football. His legs are obviously a weapon. 11 for 59, 5.5 yards per carry this week.
Yeah.
They scored 32 points. Oh, he scored 2 rushing touchdowns, excuse me. And they're 4-2. In what world does this kid get benched for Russell Wilson, who has done nothing for the last year and a half, 2 years?
And please don't do the Wildcat offense.
No, God, no.
God, please don't do that.
A little bit, no.
Oh my goodness! Just if you're gonna bench him, and let Russ take the keys, man. But I do feel you, brother. I personally, if I was a Steelers fan, I would probably want us to trade, and I say us as a Steelers fan in this perspective. By the way, I would want the Steelers to trade Russell Wilson, whether it's to the Dolphins, whoever wants a starting quarterback right now, whoever needs a little placeholder for their team right now, and they're just gonna, basically fuck with all of the chemistry and all of the camaraderie that they've built together so far this season and the successes that they've had and go completely against it. I will say this from a fantasy perspective of receivers on the Pittsburgh Steelers, like Pat Freiermuth, George Pickens, right? These guys around the league. if you're an owner of them in fantasy, I would be a little bit more excited though from that standpoint. But from a winning standpoint, I don't know that Russell Wilson is going to give you a better chance to win. Maybe a better passing attack, maybe more passing touchdown. I don't know.
Maybe,
but like wins, I don't see it, man. I don't see it. I don't think it's worth the risk. Is what I'm trying to say.
No.
It's not worth the risk because you can't go back either. If you go back, you're going to look really dumb. You know what I mean? Like you can't go and start Russell Wilson this week. He looks horrible, and then go back to Justin.
Look, I'm not saying that the reins should have never been handed over to Russell Wilson at some point. You don't do it when you're coming off of a 32-13 victory and your team's 4-2, and that young quarterback has the dynamic ability to score 2 touchdowns with his legs in this game. He's not throwing interceptions. It's been something he just hasn't really done it all year. So I agree. Yeah. And to Hunter's point, Russell Wilson, 66.5% completion percentage last year, over 3,000 yards, 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. He was good last year. I think he threw for the lowest yards in his career, but had a good TD interception ratio, a high completion percentage for his standards. So, look,
it's very shocking.
A train wreck in a bad Broncos system last year? No.
From Mike Tomlin.
If Russell Wilson got the start week 1 or week 2, there'd be no question about it. You don't do it when you're 4-2.
Yeah.
You don't. You now maybe or listen, you give Justin Fields a short leash. And if Justin Fields goes out there, who do they play this week? Don't they have a pretty tough game this week?
They play the Jets.
All right. So if you started Justin Fields and he goes out and turns the ball over 2 times and you guys lose by 2 or 3 scores and you're 4-3 and you don't want to let the season slip away to the Ravens, then maybe you make that argument. But just the timing could not be worse, man. And I would just ask, what does Justin Fields have to do to be a starting quarterback? He's never going to be a guy that's throwing for 285 yards. It's not him. It's part of the reason that I don't have the faith that he is a playoff contending, Super Bowl winning champion at some point. Doesn't mean
maybe that's the thought. I'm not saying that Russell Wilson gives you the idea that you are a Super Bowl contender, but maybe that's the idea is that Russell Wilson raises the ceiling a little bit further. They're excited about how it has looked with Fields and they're dreaming of what it could look with Wilson. I will say this, if I was a Steelers fan at the same time, I guess I would trust Mike Tomlin. It is puzzling of a decision from a guy
I gotta throw something out there. Mike Tomlin is one of the greatest coaches of our generation, and I think he still is. But and I'm not saying this was what you were saying, I would trust Mike Tomlin too, but I think Mike Tomlin has ultimately too much trust from everybody else and gets too much. What's the stat he's had? The most consecutive seasons without a winning record? Well, you want a fucking cookie, but how many of those? How many of those were you 8-7 and not really? What does that matter? Oh, 8-7, 4 years in a row. Good job, Mike. Who gives a fuck? But they kept
that consistency.
Look what he keeps doing with nothing. With nothing, he's had one of the top defenses every single year. Not taking anything. He is one of the best coaches in the National Football League today. But there should just be no blind faith in this move, because if this bites him in the ass, man, people are going to look back and start to freak out. Because here's the thing, Scotty, you can't just give Russ a 2 to 3 week win. You can't give Russell Wilson the ball now, and if they go 0-2, Justin, you're back in. That shit doesn't work. What did I say to you in the summer? If you have 2, you don't have 1.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I go back and forth with this. It is a puzzling move, nonetheless. I do agree there. I go back and forth in my mind with it because I think about last season for Pittsburgh, and if you're Mike Tomlin and you're that offense and you're trying to run an offense here, it would just get so tiring of not having a pass-first quarterback, man. Kenny Pickett and then Justin Fields. Justin Fields obviously a lot better than Kenny Pickett this year. But just not having that prototypical passer, a guy that can go through his reads, get the ball to different guys. I go back and forth, though, because the other side of that is Justin Fields' dual threat and what that poses against the defense. And it's hard to stop when you're not turning the ball over and when you're confident running the
Yeah.
football. So we'll see, man. They're messing with their identity. That's what they're ultimately doing right now. They've
Yeah.
created an
You
identity
know what
over
it
the
could be,
first 6
Scotty?
weeks.
It could just be the fact that the Steelers watched how the Cowboys got their shit kicked in by the Lions and said, "We lost to that fucking team. We
Yeah,
only scored 17 to that team
yeah,
last week. Uh-oh.
yeah,
We might need to make a move." But yeah, man, I get it. Look, he's had 2 really great weeks. He threw for 245 in week 2, and he backed it
yeah.
up with 312 against Indy in a loss in week 3, right? Outside of that, he's thrown for a buck 17, a buck 31, a buck 45. He's had in the last 2 weeks 58% completion percentage or lower. Like, to your point, maybe they just have different plans for what this offense needs at the
Yeah.
helm. But again, winning cures also. I don't know. It's
I know. No, don't get me wrong. I do feel you. It is an odd move at 4-2 when we've seen Russ in uniform the last couple weeks
right.
too, by the way.
Right,
So,
especially when he only has 1 pick on the year. Like,
yeah.
with that defense
Turnovers.
and his dual threat and their ability to run the ball, what more? Like, all right, I want more than a buck 45 from my quarterback.
They're
I get
fighting for
that.
that division right now, man.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It really is. They're fighting. They're right there with the Ravens. They got the same exact record. Browns
I
obviously
agree.
going nowhere. Cincy going nowhere. You're taking a big risk for sure.
And to Hunter's
It
point,
could.
it could work. Like, that's the thing. It could work out the complete other way. And Russell
Yeah.
Wilson comes in and throws for 320 this week against the Jets, and the Steelers beat the Jets by 10 points, and things just look a lot different than we were expecting. But nonetheless, it's not looking like the greatest move in the world at the moment. So with that said, I guess, man, let's get into our top 10 power rankings here before we talk a little bit about this Thursday night matchup. I'll run through it quickly. I'll let you dive into yours more specifically and see how many we have intact and the same. Obviously, I'm coming off of my week 5 power rankings. Starting us off at number 1, do I think they are pound for pound playing the best football in the league? Absolutely not. They're one of the only 2 undefeated teams left in the league right now. They're the defending back-to-back Super Bowl champions. They're not healthy on the offensive side of the ball, and yet they're 5-0. I have the Kansas City Chiefs at number 1. At number 2, I do have the Baltimore Ravens, as we talked about. I think that Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry dynamic, along with the emergence of Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely with that tough, hard-nosed defense. I think the Ravens are the quote-unquote best team in the AFC. I just can't put them above the undefeated Chiefs who have beat them and who are the reigning Super Bowl champions. Number 3, I have the best team for my money in the NFC right now. I have the Detroit Lions. That speaks for itself. At number 4, I do have the team that won on Monday night, the Buffalo Bills. Bringing in Amari Cooper, I think, puts them in top 3 contention in the league and in the AFC and puts them in a spot to fight with the Ravens and the Chiefs now. At number 5, I have the other undefeated team, the Vikings. Look, I mean no disrespect, and I understand, you have the Chiefs undefeated, the Chiefs are also the reigning, defending back-to-back champs. They also have the greatest quarterback in the world. They also have a very, very, very experienced defense, right? So it's not the same. Like, the Vikings 5-0, they look great. I get it. Would I take them to beat the Lions and the Ravens? No, I wouldn't. So they're not up there. Number 6, I do have a team. The only loss that this team has and it's to the Vikings. I have the Houston Texans. They got Joe Mixon back this past week. They're 5-1 now. And Joe Mixon might just be that missing piece for them, man. They've only had like a week and a half of them. Obviously ran the shit out of the ball against Indy in week 1. This past week, 13 carries for over 100 rushing yards. That opens up so much in their offense with CJ Stroud at the helm. So I do think the Texans have been kind of flying under the radar. They're a team you and I kind of like criticized about ugly wins a few weeks ago because they were ugly wins, and then they lose badly to the Vikings, and it's like, are they in that contention? I think they are flying under the radar, and they'll remain right around there. Number 7, I'm going to put some respect on this team's name. I'm going to go with the NFC East leader and Washington Commanders right now. I think they have some realness to them. I think they are a playoff team. Do I think they are making any headways in the playoffs? Do I think they're making an NFC Championship appearance? No, I don't. But I do think that they are a very good football team, and I think Jaden Daniels is unbelievable.
Yeah.
At number 8, man, people are going to come at me for this one. I have the Eagles at number 8. I'm looking around the two teams I have below them. Let me flip-flop this. I'm sorry, because my logic's not lining up. At number 8, I have the Bucs. At number 9, I have the Eagles. At number 10, I have the Packers. I had the Eagles ahead of the Packers. The Packers are now, 4-2 on the year? The Eagles are 3-2. People act like the Eagles and Packers, just because they met in week 1, that matchup didn't matter. The Eagles beat the Packers, okay? And they did win last week. So as ugly as it is, they are 3-2, and they weren't healthy before. But with that said, I can't put the Eagles ahead of the Packers and then argue that the Eagles are also better than the Bucs when the Bucs kicked our asses 3 weeks ago. So Bucs 8, Eagles 9, Packers 10.
I like it, man. There's a lot of similarities here, but I'll start at the top as well, man. I'm with you with the Kansas City Chiefs at number 1. They're 5-0, like you said. They have the pedigree to go behind the undefeated record. They're coming off a bye week, so we'll see what they look like this week. They got a huge matchup with San Fran, which I don't know. We'll see where I'm at come Sunday on that game. Number 2, I went with the Detroit Lions. I am with you on them being the class of the NFC right now. They're so balanced. They run the football. They can pass the football. Their defense. They did have a great pass rush. They do have a physical secondary, but we'll see how the Aiden Hutchinson injury impacts them moving forward. I do expect them to make some type of move, for some type of edge rush help there. They're going to have to supplement that. But number 3, I go with the Baltimore Ravens. 4-2 right now, but they're picking up steam right now. They're figuring themselves out. Still worried about their defense, just from the standard of Baltimore and what we're used to from them. But you have to imagine it's going to get better over time, and they are trying to fix it. So we'll see what happens with their defense, but still just such a dynamic offensive machine there in Baltimore. Number 4, I went with the Minnesota Vikings, the other undefeated team in the NFC. They got a big matchup against Detroit this weekend, so they'll get to, make their case to move up higher by themselves. They get the opportunity early on in the season to really prove themselves. And to be fair, the Vikings have proved themselves a couple times now already. They have beaten the 49ers they've beaten. They beat the Jets. They've beaten who they beat last week or the week before last. They've beaten the Texans as well. The Texans only lost. So they've got some quality wins mixed in there. And did they beat the Packers too?
Yeah, they did beat the
Packers.
It's the game we bet the Packers. The Packers went down 28-0 and then almost came back.
So they beat the Packers, they beat the Vikings, they beat the 49ers. That's 3 wins right there against teams that, I would argue those are playoff teams, but we'll see. Minnesota, you still want them to prove more, though. It's Sam Darnold at the end of the day. I still need to see it over and over and over again for a few weeks before I'm really, really going to believe in it. But you take on Detroit, that is the ultimate test right there in the NFC. You mentioned it. They're the class. So Minnesota at number 4. Number 5, I went with the Houston Texans. They were in a very interesting spot this week. I saw a couple people taking like the Patriots to cover the spread against them. I actually went the opposite direction. I thought this was a chance for the Texans to really just have that dominating performance we've been waiting for from them. Joe Mixon comes out here, has 2 touchdowns in this game, impacts the game from receiving and rushing. We know how he helps as a pass protector as well. I think that doesn't get talked about enough with Mixon. But like you said, I think he looks to be the key piece to that offense, just going full throttle. They didn't even have Nico Collins.
I think he opens up a lot, man.
Yeah, I do agree, man. So we'll see what Houston looks like moving forward as well. I think, don't they have a big matchup this week too? There's some big matchups this weekend. I don't obviously want to get into those tonight, but
Houston at Green Bay.
At Green Bay. Okay, at Green Bay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Because I was looking at that as like a Houston smash spot for me. But you don't know though, because the next team on my list is the next team on the list is the Green Bay Packers for me here at number 6.
There you go.
I do know the Eagles beat them earlier on in the season, but they have looked better since. Right now, the lack of competition is something to be measured in between there. They go out there and dominate the Cardinals this past weekend, take care of business. Who's really impressed me, though, I won't lie to you, man. Jordan Love, he is spreading that ball around. He's got some pretty good numbers.
Yeah, I picked him up
since
in
he came
fantasy.
back, man.
If someone had dropped him during the injury,
Yeah.
they had to. I was like, let me grab it.
He puts up numbers. He puts up numbers. I will give him that, man. The Packers, their defense is what I've been mostly impressed with so far this season. I think that's going to be their calling card. And then once they can figure out Josh Jacobs, get that run game going, I think that might not kick in until it gets a little bit chillier out, and then they'll really start pounding Josh Jacobs with that run game. But I like what the Packers are doing right now. After the Packers, at 6, I have the Packers were at 6. At 7, I have the Buffalo Bills at 4-2. I love the Amari Cooper addition. I think it's exactly what they needed. They needed kind of a spark, because before this game against the Jets, they had 2 kind of stinkers, right? Josh Allen specifically had 2 stinkers against the Texans and then the Ravens before that. They come out this week, get a big win in the Meadowlands against the Jets, who needed a W. You take kind of control of your division in a sense, and now you add Amari Cooper. It just seems like the perfect spark to add to this Buffalo team. Number 8, I did go with the Washington Commanders. It's not that I punished them this week because of that loss to the Ravens. It's more that these other 2 teams that I jumped ahead of them with which were the Packers and the Buffalo Bills, they won. So I moved the Washington Commanders down 1. They're coming off a loss. But I do agree with you. I think they are for real in the NFC, given the nature of the NFC right now. Eagles not looking like this, super contender. Right. San Fran not looking like this super contender. Dallas obviously out of the picture. Atlanta has had ups and downs. Like even this past week, they get the W against Carolina. It was closer than what it had to be at times in that game. The only question I would throw to you based off what you said, because it stuck with me, what you said, was that maybe they're not like an NFC contender, but if the Eagles aren't, and if the San Francisco 49ers are beat up, who else is really left that they can't compete with other than the Lions? But no, I think we're in the same space with the Washington Commanders nonetheless. Number 9, I went with the Atlanta Falcons. Kirk Cousins, man, playing some good football though. I'll give him that. Got Bijan going against the Panthers.
The Falcons and the Bucks were the back and forth for me.
Yeah, the Bucks are right there, and they're to be clear, they're on my list of honorable mentions. I might be falling into the hype with number 10 in the Chicago Bears, what they did in London against the Jags. I might be falling in with the hype a little bit with that pick over the Bucks, but Caleb, man, he's playing some good football.
Yeah,
DeAndre Swift is running that thing.
We got flexed out of a key spot against Joe Burrow because of those 2 young quarterbacks. The Eagles versus Bengals gets kicked out of the 425 slot for
those weapons.
Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. That's crazy, man. I can't blame the NFL.
Can't argue against it.
Yeah, it's the first 2. It's the top 2 rookie quarterbacks in the league right now. Both teams playing well at the moment, even though we're a few. What are we? How far are we away from that game? 2 weeks or 3 weeks? 2 weeks?
2 weeks. Yeah, we played the.
Is it Giants Bengals or Giants Jags Bengals?
I want to say Giants Bengals.
You could be right, but dude, to your point, not to get off track here, to come back.
Yeah, we play in Cincy in week 8. We play in Cincy.
Sunday is going to be a crazy show because we have Seattle, Atlanta, which is an underlying good NFC matchup. You have Houston, Green Bay. You have Detroit at Minnesota. Obviously, for us, you have Eagles-Giants rivalry. And then you have the Chiefs-Niners Super Bowl rematch. And then Sunday Night Football, you have the Jets getting Devontae Adams at Pittsburgh with Russell Wilson making the start. And then Monday Night Football, the earlier start game, is Ravens at Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
That is a hell of a
they got that little stinker before the Ravens and Bucks. On Monday Night Football, but I mean the Cardinals or the Chargers are 3-2. Be fair to them, but that's a hell of a weekend, man. That's a hell of weekend. You even got the Stinker Bowl between the Bengals and Browns.
Yeah,
The
which was
little
supposed to
orange
be a
Dookie
great
Bowl.
game heading into the year, but whatever. Oh, wait.
No,
the
that
best
is
part, dude,
that is interesting.
the
man.
best part about this week, though, is while it's a loaded Sunday, we as a country are doing, I saw a tweet about this, we as a country are doing the worst thing to England that we have done since the revolution. The 9:30 game in London is the Patriots and Jags. That is so
disgusting.
gross. That is
Mm.
so fucking gross, man.
And they
And
might
then-
get some Jacoby Brissett out there. It might not even be Drake May style,
Literally,
man.
dude. Literally. And then you have tonight's matchup with Darius says we got to get through. How do we get through a game like this, Darius? How do we get through a Bo Nix versus Spencer Rattler led game on Amazon Prime? We do it by making money. Scotty,
Yeah.
what are
Facts.
we looking at tonight between the Broncos and the Saints? From a game perspective, I think we both agreed that we were on the Broncos tonight. I
Yeah.
know that the Saints were able to put up points last week in Rattler's first start. I do believe Olave is out tonight, which actually brings up a great point. I need to check my fantasy lineup. But I believe he is remaining out from the injury last week. And I just don't think Spencer's going to find nearly the same success, against that Broncos defense in that secondary.
Rashid Shaheed out as well.
Yeah, with
Wide
that
receiver
said, with
too.
the lack of weapons and the Broncos defense combined on a short week for Rattler, I do like Bo Nix and company to get a win on the road and actually become 4-3 on the year.
They do. The only concerns with the Broncos, I will say, it looks like Pat Surtain is out. Baron Browning, the linebacker, is questionable, and Damari Mathis, the cornerback, is questionable. So they do have some injuries on the defensive side of things, but to your point, New Orleans has the injuries to match on their side. So even Taysom Hill is doubtful for this game. Rashid Shaheed is out. He went to IR, actually, because of some surgery. Chris Olave out.
Here's my question.
Stephen Louise, the center, is out for New Orleans as well. So some offensive line hindered.
I know we have another scoring prop that we're going to introduce in a second. But how in the blue hell does Alvin Kamara not find the end zone tonight? So multiple things, right? You just mentioned all those injuries for the Saints. Unless the Saints are getting shut out or only kicking field goals tonight, someone's got to find the end zone for them. Secondly, Alvin Kamara has never scored on Thursday Night Football. Did you know that?
Interesting. No, I did not.
I think he's played in 6 or 7 current Thursday night games, has 0 touchdowns in those games. Is it time for Kamara to break through with a touchdown? He's just moved to -110. So it doesn't have the plus juice that others have, but still, when you see other running backs going for -160 and -180 on the market, it's not terrible, man. Also, I'm not laying it, but Juwan Johnson at +425 is pretty interesting.
He's funny, man. Like, he is a funny player because he pops up on my capper wise. He pops up on touchdown score lists multiple times a season. But then I won't see him anywhere else involved anywhere else. But no, Alvin Kamara, man, I did look at that earlier. I think it was at -125 at the time, and I was like, like you said, who else? Even out of these two teams, I know we have, like you said, we have a scoring prop later, which is kind of just a vibe, I guess we're going with. It's a vibe, but he's also scored in half of his games, or maybe even more than half of his games so far this year.
Let me just check that real quick. Let me see how many he's got.
Pretty sure it's 3 out of 6. Have they played 6 games? Yeah, they're 3-3.
He scored in 2 so far.
No, I'm showing him in 3. So week 1.
Really?
Yeah. So week 1, week 3. So it's basically been every other week.
Oh, it had Pittsburgh at the bottom of my screen as the first game. So yeah, there it is. Week 1.
Seattle was,
and you are right. It's every other week, bro.
It's every other week.
It's right there for us, and that's where we're going. D-Rap.
Yeah,
it is the Bo Nix anytime touchdown for us tonight. He just moved to +230 on Fanatics, so that's where I'm going to try to get it. But Broncos money line is kind of where we would lean not technically advising to go and throw money on either of these two teams.
Doesn't have enough
individually.
juice to risk it.
Yeah, it is. It is tough. Bo Nix anytime touchdown, and then we're also going to ride the Bo Nix train tonight. Bo Nix over 199.5 passing yards. Or you can get him at 200 plus for plus 105 against the Saints. The Saints are 29th against the pass yards per game. They give up over 262 yards through the air. Like Scotty was mentioning before, I know the Eagles didn't score a lot of points in that squeaker of a win, but it is the best statistical game Jalen Hurts has had this year. The Eagles moved the ball a ton. I think he threw for over 300 total passing yards in that game. So the Saints allow a lot of passing yards, man. So hopefully Bo Nix can just get us to over 195 tonight.
It's not a best bet by any means, but I put a lot of thought into the over, man. I did. And
what's it at? 37?
It was 37.5, yeah. And I couldn't bring myself to do it, but like it definitely feels like a game where that is just too low. Just like one of those weird games where both of these teams could score 20 plus points, but at least one of them could, which if one of them scores over 20, you're probably going to hit
Correct. Like if the Broncos go and score like 23 points tonight, is that 37 not hitting? Like, I don't know. So, and again, with the spread only being 2.5 to 3 points, they're thinking it's going to be a closer game. So in order for that to line up, it would have to happen. But those are our three best bets for tonight. We're on the Broncos. We're on Bo Nix. Broncos money line, Bo Nix anytime touchdown score, and Bo Nix over 195.5 passing yards. Or you could throw out the 200 on an alt line for a little bit more juice for yourself. For DSM, for myself, for Scotty, guys, let's get on out of here and get to this action. We got some playoff baseball going on right now. We got hockey and NBA preseason kicking off in 15 minutes. A lot to talk about tonight, or a lot to watch tonight. We will be live tomorrow morning discussing all things in the Philly sports realm. Eagles, Giants, more Flyers talk, more Sixers talk, etc. Around 9:30, 10 a.m. tomorrow morning on the DSM Media Philadelphia YouTube channel. So make sure to follow and subscribe to all social media platforms, and make sure to get yourself acclimated with the YouTube channels as well. For myself, for Scotty, we got to go. Peace out.